Hey, are we ready? Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our city council work session. It's Monday, September 9th at 5:30 p.m. and we'll get started with the roll call.
Mayor Garitano,
Here.
Councilmember Brost, Councilmember Edens,
Here.
Councilmember Ottenberg, Councilmember Dodwell,
Here.
Councilmember Marshall,
Present.
Councilmember Jaxi, Councilmember Hopper, Councilmember Galani,
Here.
Councilmember Preston,
Here.
Councilmember Mabry,
Here.
Councilmember Nyan, Councilmember Farmer,
Here.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Here.
Councilmember Rambo,
Here.
Councilmember Crayons, Councilmember Albers.
Okay, good to see everyone here. Thank you for all those that are joining us in the room and those that are on Zoom. We'll get started. We have several for information items here, so I'll pause to see if there's anyone that has any questions or seeks additional information pertaining to any of the for information items. Councilmember Ottenberg.
Excuse me. I think it's under for information. The information that we've received regarding some of the guidelines for Celebrate Wildwood. Have a question, clarification on that. So the most important question that I saw on that was not addressed, and that is, can we still distribute candy as in previous years?
Sure, and I'll ask Councilmember Edens, who is a member of the Celebrate Wildwood Commission and also serving as co-chair, to answer your question and to provide any other helpful tips for the parade, golf cart decorating timeline, and so forth. I apologize. Just a reminder, when you do speak, make sure to use the microphone, push the button. Thank you.
You sure can throw out candy this year. And as a committee, we recommend a nice underhanded toss.
All right. Thank you very
Yes.
much.
Yes, decorations encouraged, general merriment, music, holly jolly. Yes.
Super.
Another question. On Friday, I think it was an email came out regarding the Latitude 38 project, and it dealt with changes to the drainage map to address concerns that some of the residents had over in that area regarding flooding. And I was just curious whether Director Vunich and or Director Brown had a chance to review that information.
So that is under for action.
All right,
we have
perfect.
that topic, and
We'll wait.
if you can hold on to that question, we'll come back to you on
Absolutely.
that. But under for information, is there anything else that anyone has any questions or comments? Councilmember McCutcheon.
How many businesses or individuals have actually asked for wayfinding signs throughout Town Center? Town Center is not just Deerberg's Town Center, but it expands quite a few miles across the city. So I'm curious as to how many businesses or individuals have actually requested wayfinding signs.
Thank you, Mayor Garitano, and thank you, Ms. McCutcheon. In this case, we've actually had from our business forums, we've had a couple and we've ran this idea by them, but we've also had this, in general, we've had probably about 5 to 6 different businesses say that it was a good idea. And then we've had a whole grouping of businesses support the idea of it in general. But this test pilot study, if you will, is supposed to be just kind of a glimmer, and then the rest of the town center would eventually have these signs if it proves successful. We've had 5 or 6 businesses reach out directly with support of this.
But reach out to you with support after you had the meeting or prior to the meeting?
It was originally brought forth during discussions with R.L. Jones Properties a while back, and it kind of fostered from there. And then the city came up with a slight idea for it for a pilot program, and that's what was brought forth to the Planning and Parks Committee, and then also the Economic Development Committee.
And so the business that I don't know if they're purchasing or renting that used to be where Wildwood Dance Studio was. When they became interested in that property, they knew it was behind another building. They knew the ordinance on how many signs they could have and where they could be placed, correct?
I would believe so, yes.
And I know they're asking for wayfinding signs. Is that one of the members of the meeting that was there?
Oh, no. So in this case, this is more so we had a discussion about it quite a while ago, and we were discussing it with R.L. Jones, who's actually a property broker in the city, and they had given it rejuvenated interest. They kind of asked, hey, where was the city on that? And back in a couple of years ago, I think it was 2018, we had talked about a pilot program and didn't go forward with it. So it's just really checking in on that program. They already knew about it. So in this case, they then said, would this be something the city would reconsider, which then we brought it to committee. But I do not know the business you're speaking to about the other signage that's being added to it.
I don't know the name of the business either. I just know that there was interest in, I think maybe it was the broker. And they can only have 2 building signs and then 1 monument sign. But because of where they were located, they wanted a wayfinding sign.
Yeah, Director Vunich has his hand up, so I'll let him.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. McCutcheon, that particular business was interested in the Farmer Mueller house. They are no longer pursuing that property. But out of that discussion, as Mr. Lee mentioned, we started back and looked at the wayfinding signs that had been discussed over the course of many years. And the Planning and Parks Committee, I think, did a very smart thing. The pilot program will be on Route 66. And as you know, in 2026, Route 66 will be celebrating its 100th anniversary. So even if the pilot program isn't necessarily successful or City Council finds it not what they thought it would be, we'll still have the investment in the signs for Route 66, and that'll be a positive. The 2 properties that we generally hear about is where Mueller House was, behind the Grover Post Office, and those businesses that are behind now, JB Wellness. And then if you talk to the folks down in Pond, they'd love to have some kind of wayfinding at Route 109 and Manchester Road to get people down there. Thank you.
So the only wayfinding signs are only going to be on Route 66. Is that correct?
That's correct.
The pilot
That's the
program.
pilot program.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have anyone else regarding any of the for information? Okay. Well, seeing no other hands up, we'll move forward with for action. And that first item is regarding latitude North 38. So I will ask Director Vunich to introduce this item here.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, the development entity, that being TB Realty and Development and Benton Homes, have resubmitted a set of plans. The plans are intended to address, again, some of the persistent or more concerning comments that have been identified either by City Council or residents in the vicinity. So tonight you have different sheets that ultimately show a reduction in the overall lot count from the original 57 sought by the development entity to 55. 55 is still more than what the proposed conditions for this project that were requested by City Council. The condition says 53 at this time. Along with the lot reduction or the reduction in density, the development entity has agreed to install fencing, site-proof fencing along the entirety of the south property line, or in those areas where there is a risk of light trespass from vehicles using the network of roads. So that fence will be a minimum or maximum of 72 inches in height, 6 feet, and will provide the screening that have been requested. Additionally, the development entity has changed the lot layout along the eastern boundary of the property so as not to have an alley abutting next to the city's village green. The change required the lots to be front facing with their garages. But for all intents and purposes, there's a greater amount of green space now bordering Village Green. The fourth item relates to stormwater runoff. The engineer of record, Voles, submitted a plan that for the most part shows that with the development in place, the amount of stormwater exiting from the property, the subject properties to the south, will be significantly reduced. Right now, it's all sheet flow. It's not controlled, it's not managed, and it certainly isn't deposited in a basin. Under the proposal, between the curbs, gutters, curb inlets, area inlets, all of that is to be directed into the retention detention basins and ultimately discharged there to the east toward City Hall and the theater. The final item that was identified by the development entity is a request for certain relief to the Main Street contribution for its construction. The point of the development entity is that they are responsible for improvements on Etherton Road along their frontage. They are obligated to pay traffic generation assessment fees. And then finally, to make Main Street more of reality, they are willing to donate up to 40 feet of their land area for the construction of the eventual Main Street connection. The department has reviewed all of these, and certainly there are some positives, and they address many of the concerns that have been voiced over the series of meetings. The only item that the department believes is truly within the purview of the city council from a standpoint of just pattern we follow is that Main Street request for relief. And certainly the development entity can probably tell you the facts and figures better than I. The department's available for any questions or comments, and thank you.
All right, thank you, Director Vunich. So I will check now to see if we have any questions or comments, and I see Council Members Albers and Rambo to start off with. So Councilmember Albers.
I know residents requested a 24-hour management on site, and I know they did not agree to that. Is there plans for a leasing office on site? I saw that in my visits to some of their other developments. So wondering if they would be having a leasing office on site.
Typically, that is the case, Mr. Albers, but I don't know for sure. The department and city attorney have been kind of focusing on ensuring that we get a good set of rules in terms of vetting tenants. And then finally, a good set of rules in to manage the development if it is approved and constructed. So as we add an asset, not necessarily something that people will question. I would defer to the development entity if they could shake their head or nod or do something like that with the permission of the mayor. Thank you.
Okay, I had a couple other things real quick. Any concerns on water pressure? You know, several residents have brought up water pressure problems in Main Street and what's the other one? Cranberry, I'm sorry. Any other concerns maybe for water pressure developing in this area?
Again, with the permission of the mayor, Mr. Albers, part of the proposed conditions that the city council requested, we have a requirement that Missouri American Water Company provide verification that the addition of 53 units or whatever the number might be, if accepted by the city council, will not have a negative impact on the surrounding area. So we want to guarantee flow as much as anyone. That can be one of the most frustrating things you can deal with in a home.
Okay, thank you. Last thing, are the retention, I don't know if they're called ponds, or the retention areas, are they underground now?
That
Are
is
they
the
above ground?
Sorry,
They're underground.
my
Sorry to
apologies.
interrupt.
No, I interrupted you. My apologies. I've forgotten how to do Zoom. But no, the proposed condition requires them to be underground. There is a question whether the Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District will allow detention to be placed underground for residential developments. And I know the developer is working with them, and we're going to follow up if this particular project does move forward and verify whatever the findings may be. But again, as I say, the intent is to have them underground at this time and have green space instead of basically two depressions on the eastern end of the site.
Well, that would be favorable because I'm hearing some mosquito problems in a few areas on the retention ponds. So thank you, and that's all I have.
Councilmember Rambo, you're next.
Okay, forgive me, we've talked about some of these things before, but now's the time to bring them up. Joe, first, can you explain the color coding on the sketch plan pages 26 through 28? Main Street's purple on one, blue on one, and pink on another. Is there any meaningful difference, or does that just any color differentiate Main Street dedication from the rest of the parcel, or what's that mean?
Dr. Rambo, I'm not 100% sure, to be quite frank. The department's just focused on getting the maximum amount of land dedication for the development of Main Street. The intent would be is to get enough land dedication from this particular development entity to build a 2-lane road from the current terminus by City Hall to Etherton Road.
Sure,
So
I was just looking at, I'm sorry, I was looking at, for example, the blue one. It also had contour lines that were blue within the developed area. And so I thought, well, maybe there's some connection in that blue and the other blue. And so there's other stuff that's also colored, and it didn't make sense to me, but it sounds like it didn't make sense to you either. So we'll have to figure that one out, but I can leave that one go. Did have a couple of detailed questions. There's a parking, there's a bike rack and a bench in the northwest corner of the development. And I'm wondering if there's going to be any parking there. I mean, if you have a trailhead, you probably should have parking for the trailhead, not just a bike rack and a bench. And so have we considered that?
Dr. Rambo, I believe so. There are on-street parking spaces along the petitioner's frontage at Etherton Road. So there's several there.
Sure.
And then
Sure.
we have on-street parking as part of Main Street crossing that's in place already. So there is available parking in the vicinity.
Sure. Okay, good. The basin, the underground basin, is news to me. I know we were trying to get it. I couldn't figure out the drawing. I guess that's what it means. But does that give us more opportunity for screening type of landscaping in that area to sort of that would go a long way toward mitigating the visual appearance that is concerning people because of its proximity to Village Green. Can you speak to that, or is it too early to even discuss it?
Again, Dr. Rambo, it's a little early, but from the department's perspective, at Village Green, we did underground detention that's been completed, and we show a number of different types of plantings and trees around the perimeter and in the vicinity of it. So the only other instances where we have underground detention in the city, they're generally parking lot areas. So obviously you can pretty much beat them up good and still come away. So that's something we can research again if city council wants to move forward with something related to the development.
Okay, there's an opportunity for screening there that wasn't there before with those open basins. So the way I see this, getting them to pay their share of Main, that sounds like it's a must. The basin appearance and design, we need some work done there, probably some renderings and stuff of what it ought to look like at the end. That would be very helpful for me and probably others. And the other thing is, you mentioned that there is zero runoff onto the property to the south. And you mentioned some new things about curbing and piping and inlets and so on and so forth. That's comforting to me because it's not just runoff, it's not sheet flow, it's actual managed drainage. Do we have only the developers, engineers, calculations to support that? Or can we ask for some independent entity to look at that at no cost to this, or at little cost to the city, that just verify those numbers, because we owe it to the folks to the south to protect their property from runoff.
And with the permission of the mayor, Dr. Rambo, if I said zero runoff, that would be an error on my part. I cannot guarantee zero. Those are
Oh, okay.
extremes, like 100%, but it's substantially reduced. In fact, only the what I would consider the southwest tip of the property, that runoff along that tip isn't captured. The vast majority of this site is captured by the system. And so we have two checks and balances, and certainly we could add a third. The Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District will review all stormwater management plans under their guidelines, the Phase 2 Clean Water Act guidelines, and then our own Department of Public Works, Brendan Marr and Rick Brown are two excellent engineers, and they do a great job. And certainly if we need to, we've used Cochrane Engineering to verify things just to make sure we don't make a mistake and create a bigger problem or a problem. Thank you.
So the final comment, the fella, Mr. Coomer, doesn't want a swamp in his backyard, but he also doesn't want a desert. And so, having some flow is probably a good thing. And we need to figure out what that is to ensure that we're not causing a problem for neighbors there. So it sounds like you've got a plan to do that. So that's all I had. Thank you.
I see Councilmember Dodwell and Councilmember Edens. Councilmember Dodwell, please go ahead.
Just real quickly, Joe, on Etherton Road, since they're going to have some property fronting that, are we going to have some funds in escrow so that, as we all know, that road needs some improvements from a city perspective? So will we have funds from an escrow for this development that will help support improvements along that road?
Ms. Dodwell, unless Rick Brown were to say sound different, the intent of the Department of Planning is to have them construct the improvements as part of the project. They need to be in yesterday, not later. And so they would be part and parcel of the project itself. The deferring the cost, if the costs are applied for Main Street, was just a practical matter. We're still designing it. And there's probably a process out there in terms of getting it to Administration, Public Works Committee, et cetera. Thank you.
So would those improvements only be along their property frontage on the west side? Or would it be all of Etherton Road out to Main Street or on out to Manchester?
They would just be on that east side of Etherton Road on their property's frontage.
That seems only fair.
Councilmember Edens.
A couple comments and a question. And one thing I wanted to add to the conversation is initially on the Watershed Erosion Task Force, we had a Ward 2 volunteer that came in with home building expertise and knowledge for his career. Unfortunately, he had to step away due to family illness. But one of the things he taught our group was that there are cities that require individual homes right now to be built with a detention basin under each home, rather than automatically feeding into ponds like we typically do, or to more grass basins. And I believe the example that he used was Town and Country. So there's other areas where this is already like a required industry standard. So I do feel very comfortable with that, knowing that other places do that. And if the engineers say that that's appropriate and fixes the problems and allows us to have a more beautiful look to the area, I'm okay with that. I was hoping you could go back to the map and kind of talk through the departmental difference in terms of recommendation, because the recommendation I saw, and so I do realize we've had a compromise, and I really appreciate that. I'm trying to understand where you all see the difference would improve the plat. So with the 53 recommended option up to 54. So in my mind, we're really only arguing about one lot, the difference between the 54 and 55. Because I would assume any developer would take the additional option of the house. So what would that relieve in this design, or how would that improve that from a departmental standpoint? Is it related to green space or runoff, or is it the flow of the design with the number of homes grouped? Is there a specific frontage that you wanted it dropped from?
Ms. Edens, in conversations internally with the Department of Public Works and then other planners in the Department of Planning, we actually are looking at the southern boundary of the site. That area adjoins the existing residences and the larger lots on your acres. And the thought is reducing the lot count there would give more room to ensure that there's adequate space for the turnaround of vehicles. It would give more room for screening and landscaping. And then certainly from the perspective of the department, made that area look less crowded.
Right now, would that affect the ability of emergency vehicles to turn, or are they just backing up and down the street? I know they do that regularly.
There is at the terminus of the two streets, there are, three streets with the new design. There are T turnarounds. They're not necessarily the best things for fire trucks. The fire districts do accept them, but I think you're correct. Most of the drivers with a fire person behind them will prefer to back out than try to maneuver through a T turnaround.
So to run your mouse over the area where you're thinking that going down one home would, because that's big southern boundary. So kind of in that center area, that it would be less crowded.
Miss Edens, originally it was kind of lots 23, 34, 35. And then there was another to the east of 35. They were all in the vicinity of the end of street and the T turnaround. With the redesign that you see before you tonight, for the lot 47 obviously now has a pretty substantial area of space, kind of what we wanted to achieve when we were recommending the reduction. To remove just one lot now at the ends of the street probably would make it a little less symmetrical. And
right.
So I don't know if we would achieve the end, but the thought was originally, let's get more space where we need it so we can ensure that the impacts from a range of things would be minimized.
Okay, I've got one more question. Thank you for explaining that, because we've heard a lot of concerns about density. We've also heard a lot of concerns about renters, and we've really tried to manage expectations. So I just couldn't, I was having trouble looking at this and seeing how a reduction in 1 to 2 more houses would affect the overall flow. And so it may not be the hill that I would pick to die on personally. But I do have a little heartburn about escrow, and I understand business costs, but my job is not to make the best financial decision for the business, but to provide opportunity for success. What I want a little bit more information about is because I'm very concerned about precedent setting, and dealing with other developers in the future that are going to say, well, you've created a standard where you're willing to waive it in certain environments, and we feel like we've compromised. And that's part of what I have to deal with in this position is, we're here for multiple development, multiple roads, multiple wards, and not just this one. And so how do we work with this? Because I don't want this to die tonight on the vine, but I also don't want to set our council up for struggles in the future. And that's where my heartburn's at.
Councilmember Edens, thank you for that. And it sounds like it resonates with what Councilmember Rambo had mentioned, which I too have some additional questions regarding the escrow for the Main Street piece there and what has been precedent before. So I was going to ask, but it looks like Councilmember Farmer, you might have something else. Otherwise, I will ask and see if we can get some direction for the director.
Yeah, I was
planning.
just, I was going to ask sort of similarly, Joe, what is, I think we had a similar situation to this with the McBride project that was coming in where there was some issue with the escrow. Is this the same thing? Is this somehow different?
It's, Mr. Farmer, it's somewhat similar, so you are correct. In the case of McBride Homes, their dedication was only 10 feet versus 40 feet along their frontage, which is Crestview Drive. The thought there is to have them try to build 10 feet of roadway probably wouldn't be in anyone's best interest, and most of it would probably be torn up when we did the overall road project. So when we speak of escrow in this case, it's a special escrow. It's collected at the time of the first building permit or before, and it is specifically for one improvement, in this case, Main Street. So yes, we were going to basically collect funds from both entities, McBride Home, and if this project were to move forward, combine them with the capital improvement program funds we have set aside for next year, which is approximately $1 million, and see how far we could get on building the road. Thank you.
Right. So if memory serves, that wound up being more or less a deal breaker for McBride. They pulled out of that project based on the idea that we had going in here. And so much like Miss Eden's, I feel like we set a precedent already, regardless of the size of a donation or something like that. We already said that this is an important thing to us. So I would also have some real concerns about all of a sudden changing that just based on how the properties are laid out. It's not really our problem that there's 40 feet of space lining up to this road. That's what's there for the property. We don't own the property. I don't think currently we own the road. So it's not either of our problems at the moment, right?
Well, certainly frontages along development sites have always been traditionally, both in St. Louis County prior to Wildwood and with Wildwood, the responsibility of the developer. It's one half of the right of way and along your frontage. That's your responsibility. It's a direct correlation between increased density and use and the need for road improvements to address those two things.
Thanks.
Councilmember Gulan.
Yeah, I just had and hearing from the different council members that have spoken tonight regarding the need for the road improvement, I think that's probably going to be a pretty much of a consensus, I would imagine, across the council regarding that, the precedent that's been set and the need for that to be the case. However, in line with the fact that, we understand you guys are running a business and obviously the numbers have to make sense too. I guess my mind's turning to figure out like what type of compromise can be made in order to, and I don't know what that looks like from your guys' standpoint on the numbers, but to be able to get to a place where you could be able to provide that escrow for the road. And I don't know if that, I know we started at 57 and now we're at 55. We wanted to get to 53. All of those numbers are within the density tolerances for the city, as far as my understanding serves. So I don't know what that looks like. And maybe Joe, can you speak to the fact of, can the city go back to the developer and have a conversation of what would they foresee would need to happen, or what does it look like to get that escrow? Because I think it's important to get that, but at the same time, in my opinion, from a business standpoint, when you're talking about one or two units different, I don't see how that makes a life or death game changing situation with the development. Honestly, I feel like we've come a long way to get to where we're at right now. Obviously, we want to make sure it's done right. This is something we've talked to the residents about from the beginning. This is something that we owe the city. But I think, all of those pieces in play, if there's a way to have a conversation to figure out how to make some of these final pieces fit the right way to accommodate what we're looking at, I think it's worth a conversation. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Certainly, as you know, we've postponed this matter on a couple of occasions to allow just for that more communication, more understanding of the city's position to the development entity, and from the development entity, an understanding of what they're facing in terms of just the cost and the feasibility of the project if in the end, the improvements and everything else makes it impossible. So yes, we can certainly talk.
Councilmember Edens.
I just have a thought, which is, I want to signal to both the public and the developer that if this moves through, that the department recommendations are serious to me, but I'm not negotiating in bad faith. And so if what would help move this to the point where we continue to negotiate, because there's still first and second readings, is to go ahead and prepare legislation. There's always the ability to amend that, but at least you know that we're moving the ball along. And then if you communicate back that, that's completely unacceptable and that you want to walk it, then you still have the insurance that you're not wasting your time. And so for me, I think it makes sense to prepare legislation with the departmental recommendations and then continue those conversations. And if they need to postpone it, then we postpone it. But it's a signal to the developer that we are trying to work with you in good faith. We're not wasting your time. And so that's where I'm at, because I am very concerned about the escrow. Just again, your job is to be profitable. My job is to think about equity among future developments and how I keep the whole pie together. Your job is to eat your pie slice, right? So what I'm going to say is let's prepare legislation with the department recommendations tonight. And we'll trust you guys to have conversations with, your council members that represent you and the department, and to try to make this work and to communicate your needs back to us. And if you need another postponement, because I'm worried that because of developments that have failed before in this area, that the developer is going to feel like that we just can't work with Wildwood. And I also want the public to know that we listen to their concerns. And the only way I can think to do that is to make that motion. And that's the motion I'm making.
Okay, so there is a motion been made by Councilmember Edens and seconded by Councilmember Dodwell. And can you clarify what is the motion again?
I'm going to leave it as recommended by the department. So that's all the improvements. I know they weren't all agreed to. I'm not gonna die over one lot. I understand, the reasoning for the plat that was presented, but I don't feel comfortable picking it apart tonight, line by line, if we don't know if this escrow is something that we can compromise on. So that's a waste of my time and your time tonight.
So for clarity, are you saying the recommendation that was initially proposed by the department, the 53 homes?
Yeah, with up to 54 and all the
54
improvements.
yeah.
Yeah. And that includes the escrow. And the other thing is, we've got public that's really, really concerned, and we're trying to demonstrate to them that we're going to make this, the development has a right to happen, but we want to make it as good as possible. And so this is a way to demonstrate, if we didn't listen to planning and zoning, are we going to listen to the experts that we have? And so that's the best way I can do that. That's where that's coming from. Yeah.
Second, is that what you intended as well?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion then on the floor. I saw Councilmember McCutcheon. Did you want to speak about
It's not to the, what do you call it?
the motion?
The motion. It was prior to that, so no, I can't. All right.
Okay. So anyone, again, the motion on the floor is to prepare legislation then based on the department's recommendation. So any discussion? Councilmember Farmer, did you have something on the motion?
I mean, I think I understand where you're coming from, but I'm a little concerned that if we go that, the department and the developers have already put a pretty significant amount of work into making some compromises. And at least I know for myself, I would have a hard time compromising on the road escrow anyways, because we didn't do that before. And to me, part of running a business, part of doing these things is to take into account all of the various expenses and when those expenses have to happen in order to make something work. And so while I'm all for trying to help people out, I don't know that it's our position to alter that, because it puts us in danger of having to do that over and over and over again, which is just, it hasn't been the policy of the city to my knowledge to this point. I don't know that that's a precedent we want to set. I also think, you know, I would be concerned about generating legislation that is in opposition to what has already been agreed to and then having to go back and change different things. I don't know if we change the lot count, if that changes something they're going to do on the fence. Like there's a whole bunch of other stuff in there, I think, that could get altered. So I would be nervous about doing this over and over and over again. It sounds like they still have some more work to do. I would let them do the work. I don't know that we need to make a motion for legislation for it. That's just me.
Councilmember Marshall, and then looks like Councilmember Galani.
Yeah, I kind of get exactly what we're saying. I think the scary part though is I really think we should let the department come back with the options for how they want to handle the street, the easement and that, and then do the legislation. Because to go ahead and do all the process and then come back to, well, there's just no way that's going to fly. We could probably get to those options, or the department could work and say, here's the two options you have. And then it's real simple, because if it's not going to work, then it doesn't work. Instead of kind of moving it forward and keep coming back to only that one exception, where maybe that we could start out with, here's the department's recommendation and here's the option. The rest of the stuff I think has made a lot of improvement, but just getting that, because that is the elephant in the room, and maybe getting that in a discussion and a recommendation, and then it'd be easy after that decision's made is to follow through with the stuff they already have. So I kind of agree with the same thing. You put everything out there except that one answer. That's kind of the back way of doing it. So just a thought.
So if that was the case, you could make a motion to postpone, and if that motion were to succeed, then we'd postpone the original motion made, which was the preparation of legislation.
Could do that, or we could just vote no.
That's true too. All
I
right.
mean,
Yeah.
I'm fine with postponing it, but
Yeah. All right. I'll let Councilmember Galani. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I agree with Councilmember Farmer and Councilmember Marshall, and the fact that I think, you know, preparing legislation, I appreciate what Councilmember Edens was mentioning there as far as showing the developer that we're serious. I think at this stage, you know, both sides have shown that we're serious. And I think the commitment we've made to the residents is that if we're going to do this development, we're going to make sure we get it right, and that the interests of the city are protected, and that we've addressed every single concern. And like I said before, you know, I think there's been a lot of good work done from both sides, and most of the issues have been dealt with and agreed to at this point. I think with this piece regarding the Main Street escrow, it's an important piece, and I think that's something that's going to be across the board here on the dais for that, as well as the residents and the rest of the city. So and I'll just mention too, the McBride deal, we came a long way with that project. And at the very end, pretty much everybody was on board with it. It was a pretty well received final pitch that they had, and it literally fell apart because of the road escrow. And then one of the proponents of that was the fact that they had reduced their density to a point where the numbers didn't make sense, and they had no other option but to walk away. So I think, you know, while we have to maintain the integrity of our guidelines and what we're looking for, we also have to realize that a developer is a business, and making money is not a bad thing. And that's what they're supposed to do and why they're in business. And so if we're truly in the best interest of what we're trying to do here and bring more residents to the city and develop this high density zone development area, which is town center, which I certainly think we need to, we got to make sure it's done right, but we also got to make sure we're working that. I think, just as you would typically do in any contractual situation, you want to make sure all the cards are on the table and everybody's on board before you draft the final paperwork to sign. So I think in this case, I know it's frustrating for everybody, and I'm sure the developer even more so to continuously take more time. But if that's what it takes to get it right, I think everybody wins in the end. And another 30 days isn't going to be a make or break. So I would advise what you guys have said before. Let's give the department some additional time to go back to developer and talk and see what possible compromises or things can be done from either side to help get us to a place where we can get what we need to get done and it can work. So if that's possible, I'm not saying it 100% is, but hopefully it is. And if that's the case, let's see if we can't get there.
All right. Any other discussion? Otherwise, we do have that motion on the floor. All right, Councilmember Farmer.
I'll make a motion to postpone it.
Okay, so made by Councilmember Farmer, and just to be clear, postponement to,
Next month
meeting.
is fine. Yeah, I think unless Director Boonage or Rick has a thought that it needs to be longer than that. I mean, I would think they can get some stuff done here in a month.
all right, so then to be clear, you're making a motion to postpone to the next council next work session.
Yeah.
And seconded by Councilmember McCutcheon. So we do have a motion to postpone. If this motion succeeds, then at this point, then the discussion will end and they'll come back at the next meeting. So we'll try that with a voice vote, see how that works. So again, motion to postpone. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone that opposes?
Just me.
Looks like two, Councilmember Edens and Dodwell. Okay. Anyone abstain? Okay, so it looks like the motion to postpone succeeds. And just before we wrap up this topic here, Director Vunich, do you have any questions regarding the ask? Are you clear on the council's intentions and the discussions that they expect you to have regarding those items that were raised?
Yes, sir. I believe Mr. Lee, Mr. Brown, and others like Mr. Newberry and I will try to figure out a solution with the developers participating.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we'll proceed then to the next item under for action. We have under the Planning and Parks Committee, the Village Green.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor and members of City Council, before you tonight is a recommendation from the Planning and Parks Committee to do a little extra lighting, so to speak, in Phase 1 of Village Green. It is aesthetic lighting, and it will complement the other lighting that's been proposed as part of the original design. In coming up with a design, the department contacted the landscape architect that did the master plan for the overall Village Green. And that individual, Ryan Gesmer of Human Nature, provided 3 options that the department immediately identified as consistent with the committee's direction. And then a 4th that ultimately the department did not support, but believes that the city council should make the final determination. The intent is to string aesthetic lighting around the perimeter of the oval. That lighting would complement the existing pole lighting, but is intended to create a bit of a festive feel. The second component is the area where the future band shell or stage will be. And that area under Phase 1 is intended to have seating. And Mr. Newberry is the one that identified this. And I think it actually could have a nice effect because, as you can see, much of the pole lighting isn't intended to be in that vicinity. The third option is in the center. The Planning and Parks Committee had wanted to string the lights across the oval in a north-south or south-north direction. Human Nature, the company that did the master plan, expressed some concerns just about the width of that span and how it might best be done. And this is the alternative that they came back with. And then finally, the aesthetic lighting as you come into the entry area. That is the one item that the department has the least support for, just because it is in an area where we have existing lighting and there are some other lighting sources in close proximity. So from the perspective of the Planning and Parks Committee, they are supportive of aesthetic lighting. Tonight, the department is seeking direction on the overall concept, if it's supported by City Council, and if so, are there certain options of the 4 that you prefer? Thank you.
Councilmember Ottenberg.
Question for Director Vunich. Could you remind us the lighting for Village Green that we're discussing here tonight? Is that going to be LED lighting? And if so, also what is the color temperature of the lighting?
Very good question, Mr. Ottenberg. And as you know, we have some regulations that are being reviewed by the Planning and Parks Committee. So the intent is to comply with those proposed regulations at this stage. If the regulations become law and change, then obviously we would follow the law. But in this case, They are to be LEDs. They are to be a low temperature in the range of 3,000 to 3,500 Kelvin. And so from that perspective, they'll provide a warm light. And the intent is to obviously not overlight the situation, but to, as much as possible, add some nice aesthetics and create a festive atmosphere when we have our major events.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Farmer.
Yeah, Joe, so are you wanting us to pick one of these strategies or tell you which of the four that we like?
Well, again, the Planning and Parks Committee wanted to do the perimeter of the oval and across the center of the oval in a north-south, south-north direction. From the department's perspective, it prefers options 1 and 3. I think those will provide the greatest effect at the least amount of cost to the phase 1 project. There is a solution for the center of the oval, but option 2 as it's presented tonight is not that, in the opinion of the department, nor is option 4 necessary.
And then assuming we went with 1 and 3, are those going to be independently controlled, or is this like an all of them on, all of them off kind of a thing?
Independently controlled, because I think the seating area, and as you can see, we have 6 picnic tables or tables and chairs. I think that one will provide probably the most use of the aesthetic lighting. And the other will be on, I think, for special occasions. And then whenever city council feels there is an appropriate time, you all could set it 12 months a year, or you could do it however you'd like. We would certainly provide you some options to consider based upon other communities.
All right. I'm happy to make the motion to go with the department's recommendation for 1 and 3.
Councilmember Rambo, you were up next, but
Oh,
I see
yeah,
your hand. Are you second that?
I am seconding that, but I did have a couple of observations here.
Sure.
This is, the department has done a lot of work since the committee met. I agree that number 4 is not necessary. I agree that 1 and 3 fit with the philosophy that we were trying to embody, but it's at a lower price point, which is great. Number 2, Joe, does that demand 9 more poles there in the center?
Yes, it does. So those become obstructions in my mind, and really.
Sure. Right. I agree 100%. So you said there was another solution that was better than that one. Does it involve stringing all the way across the oval then?
Yes, and it's a question that we need to talk with Human Nature, the consulting firm, just how that span can be achieved without so many poles being in the use area itself.
So is our motion to tell the department to go forth with option 1 and 3, but to come back with more information on option 2, or is it?
And Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Sure.
Dr. Rambo, I guess my position would be is if 1 and 3 are to be approved, so we can go out and get some cost estimates and bring those committee to city council. I would say if ultimately those are installed, let's see what it looks like before we add 2. And if it's
That's
something
great.
we add, then we could do it at a later time.
That's great. It will be evident once we have the lights in place, whether we need to supplement with number 3. So thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
All right, so we have that motion on the floor made by Councilmember Farmer and seconded by Councilmember Rambo. Now on the motion, Councilmember Mabry. I had a question for Director Vunich, or yeah. Sorry.
Commissioner Nyan is not here to remind me. It's her fault. But to bake in the capacity automatically to enhance as required so that we don't pay through the nose for duplicated or redundant capacity. That was really all, because I did like the motion.
Right. Right, seeing then no other questions or comments on this, we have the motion on the floor. Does anyone need it repeated? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Anyone oppose or abstain? Okay, the motion passes. Next item under 4 action is the Administration of Public Works Deer Management Program. The city administrator will speak to that.
Thank you, Mayor Garitano. After the first year of operations back in March concluded, we had reached our goal in NE1 to hit 300 cull 300 deer in the NE1 area in 2023. Once that was completed, the city contracted with the St. Louis County Police Department to go collect raw data in all 6 map areas. In this case, they were able to get to NE1 and NE2 before the end of the spring, end of the winter, with the spring bloom coming in. And in this case, we were able to get a report back and a data analysis completed by White Buffalo, which showed actually a quite nice reduction, a little bit, in the NE1 area. From 2020, we had 94.5 deer per square mile, and we actually saw that decrease to around 73.5 deer per square mile, which is still very much higher than the 40 deer per square mile that is favored by the council. One interesting note on NE1 was that when they took out Shepherd Road, Strecker Valley, and Valley Roads, they actually saw that it was only 50.4 deer per square mile, which significantly reduced that number. So in this case, we've seen the number go down in the NE1 area. And if we were able to go back to Shepherd, Strecker, Valley Road, and the large property on the northern side of NE1, we could see that 50.4 deer per square mile number more prevalent across the entirety of NE1. NE2 showed quite the opposite. It showed from 2020, we had 64.2 deer per square mile recorded, and we actually saw an increase up to 94.2 deer per square mile as an estimate in the NE2 area. So in this case, we saw a pretty drastic increase over there when that was one of the areas that we did not think was as bad. We did actually hear back from White Buffalo based off this information. White Buffalo was proposing for 2024 and 2025 to go in and have the primary focus be on NE2, since it's a contiguous land area, and that we also have fresh data on that showed an increase. And in that case, they're proposing going in and culling around 200 up to 294 deer in the NE2 area and about 60.5 to 61 deer in the NE1 area. They would still be looking to go back to Panorama Drive, Shepherd Valley Road, McBride Point, and the large farmland property on the northern side of NE1. So that would be a pretty much a targeted approach in the NE1 area and some subsequent properties along there. And then the total of 294 in the NE2 area. They are proposing around $267,000 for the operation in 2025. That includes the culling operations, this baiting, deer processing itself, general travel expenses, and the site visit they would do sometime in late November, early December, which approximately brings the cost per deer, if all 355 deer were culled, to around $754.32. Tonight, the department wanted to provide an update on the proposal for 2025, but also get feedback on this approach, and is requesting a motion tonight to draft legislation corresponding to this recommendation and proposal to move forward with a program with White Buffalo in for NE2 and then portions of NE1 in 2025. The department's available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Dodwell.
First off, I want to thank the city and White Buffalo, especially because Ward 4 had a great deal of deer culled in this first attempt by the city of Wildwood. And what used to be 25 to 30 deer going through my backyard on a daily basis is now down to about 4 or 5. They're healthy deer. We do not have as many as much yard damage as we've had in past springs and summers from the deer trying to eat. They're also healthier looking deer. Yes, some of them had babies this year. That will continue. We're not going to stop that necessarily, but I think if we can finish up what we started in NE1 and get started in NE2, because that is another very dense population for deer in the city of Wildwood, I would like to make a motion that we move forward with that. I think it's a good investment of our taxpayer dollars to help protect their property and their vehicles that they might encounter a deer with.
Councilmember Edens, I saw your hand up. Is that a second? All right, any other discussion or comments regarding the motion? Councilmember Rambo.
Well, I can talk all night about deer management, but I won't. I just wanted to throw out the observation that they donated something in excess of 10,000 pounds of good, lean, nutritious meat to food banks, which is a great thing. And if you figure ground beef is $8 a pound at Deerberg's, that's $75,000 worth of meat minimum. And if we cull more next year, we will be even helping people out more. So it helps reduce the sting of the expense. That's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Okay, so with that motion on the floor, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? All right, that motion passes. All right, we've got one more item under for action here. So unless there's any objection, we'll move forward and get that done here. The next item is the Ad Hoc Building Committee installation of guttering here at Wildwood Municipal Building.
Thank you, Mayor Garitano. The Ad Hoc Building Committee has been reviewing a couple different things in the Wildwood Municipal Building over the last couple months. And one of those things are a few leaks that we've noticed. There's legislation tonight for the repair of both the clock tower leak that we've identified, but also the back police station leak. In this case, those both revolve around masonry work that is needed. And that contract is on the agenda, the regular council agenda tonight with Stat Inc. In this case, the other leak that we have identified and previous leaks that we've identified that were fixed were located above the dormers here on both the back side, the south side of City Hall, and the front side of City Hall, the north side. And then there's one other dormer that is located directly above the entrance of City Hall on the south side. So there are 3 dormers total that need some type of guttering installed on them, and then have that guttering lead down to our current guttering system, which would then bring the water away from those portions of the building. What we've noticed is that currently the dormers have a flat slope, and what happens when it rains is that it starts to build up and slowly falls off the side where we have our air handler, which is pulling in water. It's pulling in air, and when it sucks that air in, when it rains, it's bringing water in. So in this case, we're hoping to provide guttering to avoid that water from dripping above both windowsills that has some pretty loose sealant, if you will, and then on top of that, having the air system pulling in air with that water. We brought this and already have been out to bid for this item. We brought this back to the Ad Hoc Building Committee with a proposal to just do the dormer on the backhand side here, the south side of the building, the 2 that we have there. And the committee had requested that we also do the dormer on the north side of the building as well, since it is leaked in the past and it has a similar architectural feature. And in this case, another item was brought up was we went out and got a proposal to do copper guttering on both of these dormers. And in this case, that is what we currently have across the entire building. But it was discussed whether or not, going with an aluminum option that would match the same color could prove to be, a cost savings measure for the city and potentially lead to additional work being done elsewhere where we need that money here in the building. In this case, we did get proposals back to complete the addition of 3 dormers on the City Hall building. It came in for copper, about $42,000 to do all 3 dormers with coppering, with copper guttering, and then to do it with aluminum would be about $35,500, making it the city save around $6,500 if we were to go with aluminum. Would like to note that no matter what we do tonight, we will have to bring this item forth to the Architectural Review Board, just since it is changing the appearance of the City Hall building. but it is desperately needed. The kitchen is leaking pretty significantly at this point. So we're hoping to get movement on this. And the department tonight is just hoping to give both the copper and aluminum options and is requesting feedback from the committee and the council on which option they would like to proceed with, and then requesting a motion to draft legislation to bring that forth to the next subsequent city council meeting. Department's available for any questions. Thank you.
Okay, are there any questions or anyone wishes to make a motion? Councilmember Rambo.
Yeah, depending on the gauge, the copper will last forever and aluminum's going to have some problems. And whether it matches today is irrelevant because it won't match in 6 months or a year or whatever, because copper ages. I think it'd be foolish to try to save $6,000 on a $42,000 project by going with aluminum. So I would make the motion that we provide you the direction to prepare legislation to spend the 42K and get the gutters. Get the copper gutters.
Is there a second on that motion?
I'll second.
Made by Councilmember Dodwell. So we have a motion on the floor. Any other questions, comments regarding the motion? All right, seeing none, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose? Abstain? All right, that motion passes. All right, we just have 2 receive and file items here. So Director Bunich, do you want to go ahead and see if we can get these complete here?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and thank you. Mr. Mayor and members of City Council, the first item relates to an existing telecommunications tower that's located at Rockwood Valley Middle School. This is a receipt and file, no actions required. The second relates to another telecommunications tower, which had some issues relating to property maintenance, etc. Those issues were resolved and the Planning and Zoning Commission reaffirmed its approval of another year for the operation of the tower. If there are any questions, the department would be glad to answer them at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any questions from the council? Seeing none, then we are at the point where if there's a motion for adjournment, we'll close out the work session made by Councilmember Farmer, seconded by Councilmember Ottenberg. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Oppose, abstain. All right, the work session is adjourned. So we'll just take a brief pause here before we begin our main meeting here. It's currently 6:37. If anyone needs to take a moment or two, let's see how much time you need. Start 5. Let's do 6:37. We'll start at 6:45. Thank you. That's 8 minutes. Okay. All right, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Sorry for our prior session running a little behind, but thank you all for your patience here. It's our city council meeting for tonight, Monday, September 9th, and we will get started now with the roll call.
Mayor Garitano,
Present.
Councilmember Brost, Councilmember Edens.
Here.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Here.
Councilmember Marshall,
Present.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Here.
Councilmember Hopper,
Here.
Councilmember Galani,
Here.
Councilmember Preston,
Here.
Councilmember Mabry,
Here.
Councilmember Nyan, Councilmember Farmer,
Here.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Here.
Councilmember Rambo,
Here.
Councilmember Crayons, Councilmember Albers.
Right, thank you. And if you can all join me if you're able to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag.
To the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes, which we will address in the consent agenda later on in this meeting here. So we'll move on to the public participation portion of our agenda. And so public comment is a valuable component of our meeting, and anyone who wishes to speak must complete a speaker card and provide it to the city clerk, who is seated to the left of the podium. When your name is called, please approach the podium and state your name and ward number. To ensure all that who wish to speak have the opportunity to do so, there is a 5-minute time limitation, and I will let you know when that time limit is reached. If you have any questions for us, please mention that during your remarks. Identify the official you would like to respond. That official will make note of it. And at the conclusion of public participation, any official who chooses to respond will have 3 minutes to do so, as all questions directed to that official. The official may choose to respond to your questions after tonight's meeting. Please be respectful to others in making your remarks. Interrupting others and using profane or abusive language are prohibited. And I want to thank everyone in advance for following these guidelines. So we'll begin with the public participation. Do we have a speaker?
The first speaker card is Don Gay.
Good evening. Glad to be here. I would like to speak regarding the Latitude N38 project. I've heard a lot of discussion tonight about it, but I've been here many times and I've seen this boil down and boil down and boil down, and requirements being met and still some unmet. And what really bothers me the most is the fact that when this all started, even back in the McBride era when we were dealing with that, and now the Latitude N38, there seemed to be a requirement that we get this Main Street all the way through to the town center, which I agree with wholeheartedly. And that is not going to be possible, I think, unless the N38 project comes up with the escrow and the money to get this done. And it is not our business, I say the city of Wildwood's business, to negotiate with the builder so he can make more money to have this done. And I appreciate your comments, but the fact is, if we do this, I think we're opening the largest can of worms as far as negotiating about the escrow that we could possibly have. So let's be very careful about that and hold the feet to the fire when it comes to the escrow, please. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Next speaker, please.
The next speaker is Michelle Eisenhart.
Hello, everybody. First of all, thank you all for your service. I know this is above and beyond for our city, so I appreciate that. And special thanks to Deborah McCutcheon. She has been wonderful. I have emailed her just for the record, and she has been on it like that. So thank you very much for representing us. I'm coming to you tonight because it was brought to my attention that there has been an ongoing need and a request actually for a flashing safety line at or safety sign at the crosswalk at the end of our street. So I'm in Ward 5. I live right in the Dartmouth neighborhood, and it's the neighborhood without the light, if you guys are familiar with that. And our neighborhood has a lot of children. We also seem to get a lot of cars for the events for Lafayette. And that crosswalk there, while it is big, no one ever stops for it. And I've lived in that neighborhood for over 10 years. It has been an ongoing issue. I've put a child through Lafayette there. It was always a concern. But it seems to me that as the years go on, nothing continues to get done. So I reached out to many people in my neighborhood, to actually 10 families, only to find out that even within this year, multiple people have put the request to the city for the flashing crosswalk signs that we see throughout town. We see it right at Babbler. That was put in, I believe, right after the young girl Rachel Bick was hit and killed there. And I think it's a reasonable request to have that sort of similar lighting or flashing sign right at the entrance of our neighborhood at that crosswalk. It's especially dangerous because A, nobody drives the speed limit there. B, that's exactly where Clayton goes into 2 lanes. So people fly around, anybody making a turn. And C, if it's a nighttime event, you cannot see it, despite Deborah's reconnaissance with the St. Louis County, who have apparently said that it's actually their area and their budget to fund this sign. But let's just face it, St. Louis County is not going to do anything about it. And they've pretty much said that they would maybe consider it if it became available in the budget. So I'd like to ask and see, what would it take to make it the city's responsibility to put it in their budget as a public safety issue before we have an issue like a Rachel Bick. And then we're going to be required to put a sign there because the city is going to come out in droves about it. So that's my request. I don't know how this works, but I'm here requesting it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, your next speaker, please.
Julie Parsons.
Good evening. My name is Julie Parsons, and I live in Ward 8 at 2425 Etherton Road. And I wish to speak out on the Latitude N38 project. I know I've been here several times on this, and I'm glad to hear that several of the council people are looking at this project very seriously. And I, like Mr. Gay, believe the developer should not be released from its obligation to escrow funds for the road construction. Mr. Bosworth is well known in our area, and he even came to our house a number of years ago to pitch a project across the street from us. So he knows what the rules and regulations are and what the city of Wildwood expects from developers. So please hold him accountable. And I also think the project should have a rental office or a maintenance office. I don't know about the Greenberg project, if they're going to have a leasing office in that building, but I think this is basically an apartment complex and it should have that office. And I just, I'm glad you all are taking your time and looking very closely at this development. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Lynn Link.
Lynn Link, Ward 6. I'm talking against Latitude N38. After listening to the concerns of local residents at public hearings, our prior commissions and councils have voted against the proposals for the Latitude N38 development. The excessive density will dramatically increase water runoff and erosion, even with detention and retention areas. Water retention problems recently voiced from those at Brightleaf should be a warning that current standards are inadequate. Tim Coomer relayed the effect of current water runoff and erosion on his adjacent property, which would be accelerated exponentially by the increase in non-permeable surface. St. Louis County's GIS map indicates that the proposed development site sits at an elevation of 796 to 792 feet, while Mr. Coomer's property descends to 780. and west adjacent subdivisions descend to 758. The east adjacent property or Village Green descends to 776 to 740 feet. This presents a real threat. With Wildwood's past industrial history, development will surface existing soil toxins. Runoff will spread them to lower elevation, increasing risk of illness to nearby property owners. The lives lost as a result of the Bliss Callahan contamination is a warning. Keeping citizens safe from new development starts with requiring certified soil testing along with DNR asbestos abatement reports for demolition of existing structures and thoroughly reviewing the results before any approval. Etherton Road and Crestview are not able to handle increased traffic from the additional cars, requiring the developer only to pay a fraction of the cost for improvements on roads can even slightly mitigate the increased safety risk. Residents also brought up concerns that Mr. Bosworth cannot properly maintain his 4 existing rental properties, and how will he maintain up to 54 rentals? Concerns of similar Benton home rental units in St. Charles have been brought up by our citizens. Comments about low quality in construction, lack of maintenance, excessive noise, many vacancies, lack of parking, dog problems, or lawn maintenance and electrical issues at existing Benton properties have been voiced on numerous websites by people who lived in their rentals. As the developer questioned the authenticity of these, I've taken the time to print some of these out for you, along with pictures of what the other ones look like. I disagree with prior allegations that this is a NIMBY issue. That acronym is a negative connotation and has a history of being used to label residents as racist based on perceived fears. The very real concerns voiced by our citizen caused prior planning and zoning commissions and council members to continually vote against TB Benton's proposal for almost 5 years. In fact, on a Zoom hearing several years ago, then council member Garetano took the time to relay problems that his constituents voiced with existing rentals in their subdivision. Councilmember Farmer reminded us that you're all good people, and I know that serving on this council requires a sacrifice of taking you away from your families, and I sincerely appreciate that. Many Wildwood residents have told me in person and on social media that they don't feel that their money, or they feel that their money is being wasted, and that the wishes of the developers are put over the will of the people every time the council approves a development. Almost 2 years ago, the Missouri Supreme Court in Bank in the B.G. Olive Grazier case confirmed your authority to adhere to the will of our citizens in denying changes in zoning. I want to thank those council members who do a good job in representing us by not voicing their own opinions, but obtaining and voicing the opinions of their constituents. Citizens have the obligation to preserve for future generations the representative democracy that we inherited only through tremendous sacrifice of those who came before us. As citizens, this requires us being educated voters and to participate in public hearings. As citizens elected into office, this requires obtaining the opinions of the constituents, putting aside any personal prejudices or opinions one has, and always voting according to the wishes of the people that you represent. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other speakers? Do we have anyone online that wishes to speak? If you do, make sure to raise your hand, use the raise hand feature on Zoom. But if we do have a speaker here in the room, you can surely come up. Please state your name and ward. And before you leave, just fill out a speaker card for the record to give to the city clerk.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. So Rick Streifler, I'm in Ward 5. So Deborah and Ed. So I attended Ed's meeting in May and made the request that you just heard Michelle speak about to everyone here. Prior to that, my wife had sent an email. I now serve on the board of trustees with Dartmouth. And so I thought it would be important tonight to attend, not only to support what was being communicated, but to let you know that that is a voice of the entire community there, right? Not just one person, not just two people. If you come there at night when there's football games, you cannot see the crosswalk. You cannot see it. It's dark. Within the last 3 years, there's been an individual who had a dog that unfortunately was hit by a car and killed right there. There's been a car flipped over at the entrance of the subdivision. So this situation, right, could be tragic. And I don't want to overstate it, but it's true. And it seems like a very simple thing that we could address from a safety perspective for the community. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Okay, moving on for responses. I did hear a question about just what is the process regarding the item you've brought to our attention tonight. So this would require some work that would probably be, after this meeting, we can meet with the Department of Public Works. It was mentioned, and one of the challenges that we have with that is that is a county road. So ultimately, we have to work with the county, and they make the decision. But we have had some success on Old State Road, which is a county road. They were willing to provide the materials, and the city was able to pay for the construction. So we will reach out. There is a county council person that represents you and the folks here, Councilman Mark Harder. So we'll have to work through him and the Ward 5 council members. So we'll have some work to do after this. Okay. But please stay in touch with the council members because it will likely be discussed, and it'd be great to have you come to those meetings. Okay, that is all that I see. Councilmember Edens.
Yes, I have a procedural question and then a follow-up question. So I know I wasn't asked a specific question by speakers, so I don't know that I'm allowed to comment in that way. But if I ask a question about your comment, is that legally appropriate?
Now you're asking the city attorney to comment, so.
Maybe I should just ask for forgiveness. Okay, my thought would be when you're reaching out with the department to have discussions with the county would be to include Rockwood School Board because they may be able to write a letter of support, and also any parent groups. I know where this intersection is. I cross there, I get nervous. I'm an adult and I try to make eye contact with cars, but I just think that having another jurisdiction that is served by that crosswalk, write a letter of support couldn't hurt.
Great suggestion. Okay, with that then, we'll proceed moving on through the rest of the agenda here. So I don't have any other announcements or appointments will be in the consent agenda. So we'll move into the next item, which is the public hearing. So first public hearing, PZ 3-24.
PZ 3-24, City of Wildwood Planning and Zoning Commission, care of Department of Planning, 16860 Main Street, Wildwood, Missouri, 63040. A request for the consideration of possible changes to Chapter 415.030 definitions and Chapter 415.200 M1 Industrial District Regulations of the City of Wildwood's Code of Ordinances, which would consider including additional allowable uses, more specifically self-service storage facilities inclusive of recreational vehicles, boats, trailers, and similar items, such being within the portion of the city designated by its master plan as the industrial area of Wildwood portion of the Chesterfield Valley.
Okay, and just for the record, can I get a motion for the opening the public hearing for PZ 3-24? Councilmember Marshall, and then seconded by Councilmember Dodwell. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstain? Okay, the public hearing is now open. So do we have any speakers for the public hearing? And is there anyone online that wishes to speak regarding PZ 3-24? If you are, please make sure you use the raise hand feature. All right, I do not see any. So with that, I'll just close. Director Vunich, do you wish to add anything regarding this item here or wait till we close the public hearing?
Mr. Mayor, as part of the public hearing record, I would just note that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended that a additional conditional use for self-storage of RVs, recreational vehicles, boats, trailers, and other items per the Department of Planning be authorized. And so the department is respectfully requesting the preparation be authorized to prepare legislation. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll get a motion to close the public hearing, and then if anyone wishes to entertain the department's recommendation made by Councilmember Farmer, motion to close the hearing made, seconded by Councilmember Albers. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstain? All right, the public hearing is closed now. Is anyone that wishes to make a motion? Councilmember Farmer.
I'll make a motion to accept the department's recommendation
Okay, the motion is to accept the department's
to
recommendation
prepare legislation.
and prepare legislation regarding PZ 3-24. Is there a second? Made by Councilmember Rambo. All right, the motion is on the floor. Is there any discussion regarding the public hearing, the motion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstain? Motion passes. We'll move on then to the next item under public hearings. Requests regarding St. Louis County's PC 39-94, the Grover Company. Director Vunish, do you want to speak to that now, or should we wait until after the public hearing?
Mr. Mayor, if the city clerk could read it into the record, I'll have just a brief comment.
Okay,
A request regarding St. Louis County's PC 39-94, the Grover Company amended C8 planned commercial district, town center workplace district, north side of Manchester Road, east of Etherton Road, street address 16917 Manchester Road, locator number 24V540163, which seeks a modification to the existing site-specific governing ordinance to allow the permitted uses authorized as part of this existing 3-acre property to include the operation of a commercial kitchen within the existing building.
Director Vunish.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended that the permitted uses allowed by this particular site-specific ordinance be expanded to include a commercial kitchen, a commissary. The commercial kitchen would be used by Miss Becky's Salsa Shack, a local business that has participated in the city's farmers market and Celebrate Wildwood for a number of years. The Planning and Zoning Commission noted that the impact would be minimal, and this would be good for the host business, Lucky Dog Central, as well as Miss Becky's Salsa Shack from an economic development standpoint. So the department has prepared legislation based upon the favorable action, and that will be up for first reading later in the agenda. If there are any questions, the department would be glad to answer them at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. So for the record, we'll open up the public hearing regarding that item. Is there a motion for the public hearing regarding PC 39-90 Grover Company? Made by Councilmember Farmer, second by Councilmember Hopper. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose or abstain? All right, the public hearing is now open. Do we have any speakers?
Yes. Marilee Doster.
Yeah. 16910 near Acres Drive, which is directly behind the Lucky Dog Central. I have no problem with Becky. That's not why I'm here. I'm looking for clarification. On the note, it says existing 3 acres. I want to know where that 3 acres came from. I live on 3 acres and that property is not 3 acres. So could there be some kind of clarification put in there that states the exact acreage that they have? I just don't want something else besides the Lucky Dog Central or Miss Becky to be able to go in there because people think it's 3 acres. Mr. Vunish.
So the public hearing is your chance to speak, but I'm sure he'll probably
Address where the
address it
3
when he
acres
speaks.
came up.
Yeah.
That was my only question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak during this public hearing? Again, if you're on Zoom, if you want to use the raise hand feature, you can do that. All right, seeing no other speakers, then we'll close out the public hearing with a motion. Is there a motion to close the public hearing made by Councilmember Ottenberg? Is there a second? Councilmember Farmer. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstain? All right, the public hearing is now closed. I will hand it back to Director Vunish for any additional comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor and members of the city council, Ms. Doster is correct. It is not 3 acres. It's 1.15 acres. The department made a mistake in the advertisement, but the report itself from the Planning and Zoning Commission is correct. And so from that perspective, we'll make sure that the bill, if acted upon, will be corrected if there are any reference to 3 acres instead of 1.15 acres. Thank you.
So, is there anyone that wishes to make a motion and regarding this item? Made by Councilmember Hopper. Okay, the motion to accept the recommendation from the department. Is there a second? Councilmember Rambo, is that a second? Or?
Yes, and I have a question, a follow-up question.
Okay, so we have a second by Councilmember Rambo, and go ahead, please.
So is Miss Becky's salsa currently sold at the dog place, or do you have plans to sell it anywhere other than the farmer's market? Okay, so it's kind of a boutique sauce place. I see. Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? Councilmember Jaxie.
Just a comment, as a born and bred New Mexican, I gotta say, she's got some incredible salsa.
That's what I was hoping to hear.
Great to hear that. And just for clarity here, the motion, while you did intend for the accept the department's recommendation, I'm going to assume, and I'll just ask, is that to prepare legislation? Okay, in a second, you're good with that? All right. So I do not see any other hands up regarding this motion here. So all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Oh, we do have a first. So actually, we already have it, yes, for later in the agenda. So we don't need that motion. But we're already taking a vote, so we're okay though. All right, we'll proceed forward. Thank you very much. Next section of the agenda, we'll move forward now is under legislation. The first area is A, unfinished business, where we have Bill 2905 before the council for a second reading and concerns Ward 8. Is there a motion for the second reading of the bill made by Councilmember Galani? There's a second. Councilmember Albers. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? All right, Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2905.
Bill number 2905, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, accepting certain streets within Main Street Crossing subdivision for public use and maintenance, second reading.
All right, Director Brown, do you have anything to add to the information that's already been provided to council?
Thank you, Mayor Garitano. I have nothing further to add. The bill is ready for final passage, and I'm available for any questions.
Hey, is there any discussion? I just have one item I did want to bring up. I know there were some questions regarding the subdivision and the city's responsibility with maintaining the grass cutting. They had also asked the question about irrigation for that area along Main Street that is, it's got a center island there and the right of way.
Correct. And then I received that request via email and had provided a prior response to that issue. And there's probably further discussion that can be had. But in general, well, not in general, I think in all cases, subdivisions that own frontage through city streets maintain the grass and the irrigation, essentially the landscaping on those streets. That's been the past policy of the city.
So, all right, maybe that's something that we can, we have Councilmember Dodwell.
I have a question as to why the rest of the material about this issue that shows the location and what we had for the prior reading isn't attached here, so that we have consistency with what we're voting on. It's just more of a procedural question. Because we have no image of where this is located. We have no detail from what we had a month ago. And it would be helpful going forward if we included those pieces of information.
It's attached to it's either in the ordinance or the bill as presented or attached to the prior memorandum from the work session at the previous month is where it'd be right now.
I did just see the bill is there right now in the attachment, so. Okay, so I think one thing we'll just have to have is further discussion just to get clarity regarding the Main Street portion of that. So I'll ask the city administrator to see if we can talk afterwards with the sub HOA to make sure that we're all on the same page there.
Certainly.
Okay, so we have this bill. Any other discussion regarding this bill? All right, seeing none, Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll for final passage.
Councilmember Edens,
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall.
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Yes.
Councilmember Hopper,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani,
Yes.
Councilmember Preston,
Yes.
Councilmember Mabry,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember Albers.
Okay, that passes. We'll move on then to the next portion of the agenda, which is new business. And like to see if, again, we can read several items in mass to expedite the meeting. There is an item that perhaps we'll just read separately, just given the impact, which is the Bill 2919, revising the budget for the city of Wildwood for the fiscal year commencing January 1st, 2024 and ending on December 31st, 2024. But the remainder items, unless there's any objection, I'd like to propose that we read in mass. Councilmember Edens.
I would like to, if we do it in mass, I'd still want to go back and request a second reading for 2918. And because we're in fall planting and these are fall street trees. And so I'd like to, I know there's a fiscal note, but again, ground time is in the fall. So
You're referring to Bill 2919?
18.
2918.
Yeah,
Okay, let me make sure.
Omni trees.
All right, so we have a request for Bill 2918 for a second reading. And I'll ask the city administrator, I believe you were asking for Bill 2920.
That is correct, Mayor.
Okay, so we have those two items there. And then is there any other items that you see here regarding the bills that you would like to read a second time? The only one I can see that perhaps would be 2925, which is the modification of the ordinances so that the city can enforce the speed limit on Old State Road that was recently changed. Okay, so we'll come back to second readings there, but then City Clerk, if you could read for us Bill 2918, 2920, 2921, 2922, 2923, 2924, 2925, and 2926 for first reading. So we need a motion for that, to read that in mass. Made by Councilmember Farmer, seconded by Councilmember McCutcheon. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? All right, seeing none, then that motion passes. City Clerk, can you please read those bills?
Bill number 2918, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute a city contractor agreement with Omni Tree Service Incorporated for planting new trees within the public rights of way. First reading. Bill number 2920, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute a First Amendment to consultant services agreement with Rana Alanas CPA for accounting consultant services. First reading. Bill number 2921, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute an agreement with James G. Stat Tuck Pointing and Waterproofing Incorporated for masonry restoration at the Wildwood Municipal Building. First reading. Bill number 2922, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to execute an amended professional service agreement with Unlimited Play for a total not to exceed amount of $33,500 for consulting efforts for an all-inclusive playground facility. First reading. Bill number 2923, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, placing the Cayman Scott House circa 1859 onto the city of Wildwood's historic register, recognizing the dwelling as a building of significant historic importance, consistent with the Historic Preservation Commission's letter of recommendation adopted on July 25th, 2024, first reading. Bill number 2924, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, approving a boundary adjustment plat for two lots of record becoming 16.1 acres and 6.2 acres respectively, which are adjusted lot 15 of Guilford Boundary Adjustment Plat, Plat Book 345, page 638, and a tract of land in the north half of the northwest quarter of Section 33, Township 44 North, Range 3 East, located between Lime Rock Lane and Thunderbolt Lane, and to be hereafter known as Christie Subdivision, first reading. Bill number 2925, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, amending chapter 390, traffic schedule 2, speed limits of the Code of Ordinances of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, by establishing a 35-mile-per-hour speed limit on a portion of Old State Road, first reading. Bill number 2926, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, amending Title 4 of the Code of Ordinances of the city of Wildwood, Missouri by deleting section 425.130 in its entirety and enacting in lieu thereof a new chapter 426, providing for right-of-way management regulations, first reading.
Thank you very much. We'll ask now if Director Brown, Mr. Lee, or Director Vunich have anything to add, or City Administrator Lee.
Nothing at this time, Mayor Garitano, other than the request for two readings on 2920 tonight. We're available for any questions. Thank you.
Director Brown, do you have anything to add regarding
Thank
bills?
you. Thank you, Mayor Garitano. I have nothing further to add, but I'm available for any questions on the bills.
Director Vunich, do you have anything to add? And then we'll open up for any questions.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. No, like Mr. Brown, I'm available for any comments or questions regarding the bills that have been prepared by the department. Thank you.
Ask the council, do you have any questions regarding the bills that have been read here? All right, well, seeing and no other questions, then these bills will be on the agenda for the next. So we do have a couple of bills that we'll ask for a second reading here. And again, just to clarify, here we have Bill 2918 that was raised by Councilmember Edens for a second reading. And then the Department of Administration is asking for Bill 2920. And I mentioned Bill 2925, which is regarding the Old State Road speed limit. I did ask the city administrator if there's anything else, and he did say he'd appreciate if the council would consider a second reading of 2921. That's the tuck pointing and waterproofing to address a leak here at City Hall. So if that's fine with the council, then I'll ask to see if we can do a second reading regarding these bills and maps. Councilmember Dodlow? Okay. All right, and Councilmember Ottenberg, is that a second? All right, so we have a motion for the bills. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, so we have to read the approval. Right, City Clerk, please read these bills.
Is this for 2918, 2920, 2921, and 2925?
Yes.
Bill number 2918, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute a city contractor agreement with Omni Tree Service Incorporated for planting new trees within the public rights of way, second reading. Bill number 2920, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute a First Amendment to consultant services agreement with Rana Alana CPA for accounting consultant services, second reading. Bill number 2921, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute an agreement with James G. Stat Tuck Pointing and Waterproofing Incorporated for masonry restoration at the Wildwood Municipal Building, second reading. Bill number 2925, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, amending chapter 390, traffic schedule 2, speed limits of the Code of Ordinances of the city of Wildwood, Missouri by establishing a 35-mile-per-hour speed limit on a portion of Old State Road, second reading.
Okay, thank you. Director Brown, do you have anything that you'd wish to add regarding these bills?
Thank you, Mayor Garitano. I would reference the tree planting bill 2918 certainly a second reading would be helpful to get started on that project. I think either way, we can get it completed by the end of the year, but it'd certainly be nice to get things started sooner rather than later.
All right, anyone have any questions for Director Brown? All right, Director Vunich or City Administrator Lee, do you have anything you wish to add?
No, nothing at this time, but available for any questions. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, do we have any questions or discussion from the council? Okay, so and Ms. Eldridge, please read the roll for final passage.
Councilmember Ottenberg. Councilmember Dodwell.
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall.
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi.
Yes.
Councilmember Hopper.
Yes.
Councilmember Galani.
Yes.
Councilmember Preston.
Yes.
Councilmember Mabry.
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer.
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon.
Yes.
Councilmember Rainbow.
Yes.
Councilmember Albers. Councilmember Eden.
Yes.
Bills passed. Move on to the next portion of the agenda, which is
Mayor Gaetano, I never read 2919.
2919. Oh, thank you for raising that. We did mention pulling that separately. So can we have a motion for the reading, second reading of Bill 29? Oh, first reading. Yeah, motion for a first reading of Bill 2919. Made by Councilmember Hopper, seconded by Councilmember Ottenberg. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone oppose or abstain? All right, Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2919.
Bill number 2919, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, revising the budget for the city of Wildwood, Missouri for the fiscal year commencing on January 1, 2024 and ending on December 31, 2024, first reading.
The Administrator Lee, do you have anything you wish to add?
Nothing at this time, and the department would actually recommend only doing one reading tonight on this one and come back next month.
Thank you. This bill will be on the agenda for the next meeting. So now we'll proceed then to the next section where we left off. First readings from hearings with a favorable city recommendation. Bill 2927. So is there a motion for the first reading of this bill? Made by Councilmember Farmer, seconded by Councilmember Hopper. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? All right, Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2927.
Bill number 2927, an ordinance of this city council of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, amending ordinance number 2589 to allow a conditioned commercial kitchen use as a permitted activity as part of an existing business consistent with the property's workplace district designation of the town center plan, consistent with the Planning and Zoning Commission's letter of recommendation dated September 3rd, 2024, first reading.
Of any question, department wish to add anything regarding that? Director Vunich.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor and members of the city council, the petitioner, Miss Becky Salshak, had some lease issues that had to be resolved early this summer. To resolve those lease issues, the matter went to the Board of Adjustment and they granted a 90-day window to accommodate a relocation so as Miss Becky didn't have to interrupt her business. That 90-day window ends at the end of October. And actually, I think it ends before our next meeting, which is on the third Monday of October, not the second. So the department would respectfully request a second reading tonight.
All right, then is there a motion for the second reading of Bill 2927 made by Councilmember Hopper, seconded by Councilmember Marshall? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Right, Ms. Eldridge, now read the bill for the second reading.
Bill number 2927, an ordinance of the city council of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, amending ordinance number 2589 to allow a conditioned commercial kitchen use as a permitted activity as part of an existing business, consistent with the property's workplace district designation of the town center plan, consistent with the Planning and Zoning Commission's letter of recommendation dated September 3rd, 2024, second reading.
Anything that just to add any questions or on this bill? All right, seeing none, Ms. Eldridge, call the roll for final passage.
Councilmember Dodwell. Councilmember Marshall,
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Yes.
Councilmember Hopper,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani, Councilmember Preston,
Yes.
Councilmember Mabry,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember Albers, Councilmember Edens, Councilmember Ottenberg.
Yes.
Bill passes.
Thank
Moving
you.
on to our agenda. Thank you, Director Vunich. Moving on, we do have some resolutions in the consent agenda. So we have several items in the consent agenda. I'll ask there is any request to separate any of the items. Otherwise, we'll look for a motion to approve the consent agenda. Councilmember Edens made the motion, seconded by Councilmember Farmer. Do we have any questions on the consent agenda? All right, Councilmember Marshall.
Ask a dumb one on the resolution on the opioid. The notice in there said that it had to be filed by August 12th. We give an exception to be able to work around that.
That is correct. And I can, if with the mayor's permission, I can go a little bit further there. So in this case, we had the state of Missouri, the AG's office is the one who has reached a settlement with Kroger and is looking for municipalities to participate. We've participated in previous settlements in this regard, but they were trying to reach out to the former city administrator's email address, and they realized that kind of halfway through past the date. They then realized that the correct email address reached out to us, and then we got it on the next subsequent agenda. It needs to be approved, though, by the 12th is the date of the extension. So we do have till 12th.
Thank you. All right, any other questions? All right. Councilmember Farmer.
We need a second reading for that then, right?
It's a resolution, so it'd just be consent.
Okay.
All right, then seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to approve the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? All right, the consent agenda is passed. We have miscellaneous. Anything under miscellaneous? Councilmember Rambo.
Yeah, real quick. We had several folks come and express their concern about a safety issue with the crosswalk. And Mr. Mayor, you immediately addressed it. We discussed it a little bit and we're taking immediate action. I think that's a wonderful thing. That's the way it ought to work. And we haven't always done that in the past. So I give you props for that and patting ourselves on the back. That's all.
It's everyone. Thank you. So anything else? This is the last meeting before Celebrate Wildwood. So Councilmember Edens, any final words on
Yes. So I would like to thank our mayor for attending our last Celebrate Wildwood Commission meeting. He was there when a commission member did kind of say, and it was a little awkward, but they meant it well, that the council has been disappointing in the past with our decorations. And so we've been publicly called out, and they did decide to add a competition element as well. So we'll just try our best because they are using our signals with how much we're willing to do for how much they want to do as well. So it's just, yeah. Anyway, I'm excited about it. And also, several of us are headed to the Missouri Municipal League Conference as well. And just a reminder that there's a lot of cities in Missouri, right? So it is a really big deal that our mayor has been the president of the Missouri Municipal League and continues to serve on the governing board. Most cities will never be able to say that, and we have had access to somebody that has been incredibly involved in this organization, and it's made us a better city, and I'm excited to go learn. So we'll talk about carpooling after the meeting, but that'll also happen as well. So anyway, if you need help with decorations, I don't have any time, but I have thoughts, so I'll try to chime in.
Councilmember Ottenberg?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify something regarding Councilmember Nyan and I. Last year, we did not decorate our cart at all because we were taking a Zen approach to cart decoration. So we decorated it by not decorating it.
All right. Well, looking forward to it. It's going to be fun. Let's just hope for great weather like we had this weekend. So seeing other items, can we get a motion for adjournment? Made by Councilmember Edens, seconded by Councilmember Jaxi. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? All right, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you.